So I wasn't actually going to do this video for a few days. My meat suit's a little under the weather, but I just finished. In fact, my daughter and I just finished another cult series, Love Is One, and then I just couldn't resist coming in here and doing the video. In fact, I sort of blame her because we ended up watching just about every cult documentary that's been out, and whether it is Twin Flames, which was kind of interesting, or How to Become a Cult Leader, which is also interesting in the sense that some of these documentaries dissect it. And they try to find patterns that you might look for, like the charismatic leader, or practically all of them offer you something more than what's in this 3D world, which that phrase was in Love Is One. And 3D world just refers to our ordinary lives. And so they're never, across the board, there's thousands of cults across the country right now, and across the board, they always have something in reality. They always got something that makes sense. So no one is completely out there. And when you look at the beliefs across the world, it's something way in the 90s that most humans believe that there's something bigger, something more spiritual, a God of some type. And this isn't the ultimate reality. So in that sense, what these cults are offering it's not that strange. In fact, that's what I want this video to focus on, is that these strange beliefs, and these documentaries focus on these strange beliefs, but they're not so strange when we start looking at our own culture. So first, let's look at ownership, because ownership has got to be one of the strangest beliefs. And sometimes I'm amazed that it has caught on to this extent. And there's zero, when I say ownership is a belief, what I mean is there's zero physicality to it. You can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't prove to anyone that you own anything, because it's an illusion, and yet collectively we buy it. And so you could imagine a cult. Imagine no one buys into ownership. So we kind of see reality as it is. No one buys into it. And then suddenly there's this cult leader who starts selling this belief in ownership. And maybe they're a business type, and they start selling how not only can you own things, but you can increase how much you own. And we would say, well, that's, from that perspective, that would seem very cult-like, but that's no different than any business lecture you can see online. And certainly we could agree that the concept of ownership causes suffering. And you say, okay, well, that's just one strange belief. But what about the charismatic leader part? Well, this is interesting too, and I've talked about the Ph.D, this indigenous culture in South America, and how in reality they live. They don't think very much. They seem to be very much in the immediacy of experience. And they actually do not believe in one person telling someone else what to do, which is, of course, now you could get into some fine details about leadership and say it's inspiration and you're not really telling anyone. But as far as the cults go, there's a lot of one person telling someone else what to believe, and then being punished in some way for not believing it. And that's very strange. That would be very strange for the Ph.D. And so, but in the same way, we have our own version of strangeness when it comes to leadership. So we have presidents. I always find it very strange when people look at their government leaders, and these are just people, and it's a complete collective hallucination that they are in any way in charge of us. Yes, they can do physical control over any of us, but that's not what usually happens. They don't have to resort to physical control because we buy the idea that they are a leader and that they can tell us what to do. And so one of the takeaways from this video is to rely. And you can see how so much of the suffering in these cults could have been prevented, not because of some of the very basic things that they were offering, but because people bought into it without questioning. And I often talk about the right hemisphere function as the devil's advocate. And it's interesting that many spiritual paths advocate a path of skepticism. You question. You tear down the illusions and get to what is real. And you can see how useful that would have been in so many of these cult situations. So if someone just comes along and says, well, you should donate all of your money to me, and you went about it by waking up the right brain and waking up the devil's advocate and questioning it and saying, well, maybe that's not such a useful idea. Or in the case of love always wins, if you start taking silver and you turn blue, you might play with the hypothesis that you might want to stop for a little bit. And so questioning these ideas is the path to spirituality. And so one of the things I may do, so I may end up doing something on the cults in modern universities. That's a little bit easier, actually, than to look at with our own cult, which we might call modern culture. But the take home is, before we start questioning and judging these more obvious cults, we might want to question whether we're in one ourselves.